G'day, hi, and welcome. All right, you weren't ready for that, were you? Okay. 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 It's winter again. It's cold. It's freezing out there. It was minus 15, I think, last night there. It's you walk out there, everything's like either ice or crust. It's that time of year where it's just like. But I was looking at my ditches there. It's like I guess maybe early next week I might be able to start doing some brush cutting if the snow goes down just a little more. Just even if I leave a stub like that, I don't care. Just to get a head start on it, because by the time I'll be able to burn stuff, clean up and all that. But I got a lot of work for me. That's for sure. Anyway, got a World War III update for you. But before I start, first I got to do some apologies. Like when you guys comment, I might not answer back because it's a real. Sorry, no, you're running as a being outside. It's a real pain in the ass for me to type with half my letters on my keyboards out, right? So I just give everybody a thumbs up to let you know I read it, or at least skim through it, right? So because some of you guys you write long some of it, and that's fine. I'm not complaining at all. Don't take it that way. It's just like so much time to do whatever, right? So I try to read every comment I can. And I appreciate it. And one of the comments was based along the line that I may have, I get kind of ranty in these videos, like I'm aware of it. Don't worry, I'm self-aware. I try not to be. I try to stay a little bit more calm and whatever. But considering like you gotta, like when you weigh the gravity of what's really going on, how traumatic it actually is, like that people have to live through these things. You know what I mean? Like. I could just go on a tangent just on that for like a day. You know what I mean? Like the what like just because a couple of billionaires want to make money off the stock market and lunatics want the second coming. Yeah, you know what I mean. I will rant about that stuff, but the comment was along the lines of what I was saying about people losing their homes and stuff like that. Maybe I didn't come out the way I want. If I came off as like bashing on these people that lost their houses or whatever, don't take it like that. That wasn't my intention. So for that, I'm deeply sorry. Because what I was hoping to get at was that when guys like Klaus Schwab tells us you're going to own nothing and be happy, the only part he's lying about is the be happy part, right? Like that's it. Everything else is just basically like how do you think Klaus Schwab and all these world leaders? Oh, there's going to be a whole bunch of little conflicts coming up in the near future because of climate change, of course. No, it's not because of climate change. How do they know this stuff in advance, right? It's because they plan it all. So I think most of it's been planned to a great degree. Like all this chaos is on purpose. It's our elected officials, these unelected bureaucrats, these stakeholder capitalists, the World Economic Forum people, the Davos crowd, they're all the same people anyway. The UN crowd, all these people, the billionaire class, you name it. They're the ones making life miserable for everybody else because they're out of touch with reality and out of touch with the common person, right? They're just like, well, we have this grandiose idea and everything will be great. You just have to suffer a little bit. Short-term pain for long-term gain. Yeah, it's never, it's never that. And they're all kind of in on it in one way or another, like mob bosses fighting, as I say. But no, what I said about like people losing their houses and stuff like that, what I was referring to was like, like for example, in 2008, when that crash hit. When that crash hit, you saw like seniors. I particularly remember one guy stood out. We'll start with the guy in Tunisia who kicked off the Arab Spring. Basically, the guy was so broke that he didn't know what to do. He lit himself on fire in the town square, right? Just because like how much pain and suffering is that person going through to do that, right? Just like I'm so done with life because they've destroyed my business, everything like that, and then they caused the Arab Spring, right? But that came on a little bit later. But in 2008, you had like this Italian guy walk out to the town square and blow his head off. just because he was too old to go back to work again. It was just like, "Oh, I just can't do it. You know, like he was like 78 years old or whatever he was. And there was, seniors jumping off of like it was in Italy. It was really bad. Like it was really, really bad. I can't find a place to live. I'm too old to go back to work. They were committing suicide, right? And what I'm saying is, don't do that. Yes, you're going to lose stuff. It's going to suck. It's going to suck badly. So, like the people that, like, again, if you know, like, middle class and upper middle class people, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Where it's like these people go on vacations like 2-3 times a year sometimes, right? Especially government workers, they're on vacation all the time. Like every 6 weeks they get 2 weeks off, that type of thing, right? They get 6 weeks of vacation a year. Like the average person in the private sector has no clue what that's like, and what kind of entitlement that brings. Now, when these people become entitled, when they lose that, it's an elevated panic mode that they go. So they go into drugs and alcohol and all these things that, you know, destroys your life, right? And then they end up homeless. And I'm saying, don't do that. Maybe I said it too sarcastically, so I apologize for saying it too sarcastically. But that's what I was getting at. So hopefully this will kind of clear that up, because what I'm telling everybody, and yes, I've got the family home here. I don't own this though, right? But you have to understand. I've told you guys years ago that I'm probably going to be homeless by 60, and not because my family's going to kick me out or anything like that. It's not going to be that at all. What it's going to be is we're going to be taxed off our land. You're going to own nothing, right? We're at the point where it's like there are, like in the UK, for example, if you have a house that has a couple of extra rooms, they're saying, well, you have to house migrants. You don't have a choice. Like that's what's going to, like, who can live like that? You know what I mean? Because some bureaucrat who lives in a mansion somewhere says, "Oh, this would really help climate change if we could just, make sure all the plebs do what we say, and yeah, we'll force, we'll take away the sovereignty of the home, right?" And then there's just what we saw in 2020. Look at all these people that were working at like meat packing plants and all that stuff. Oh my God, we have to shut them down. They've lost business. Oh my God, oh my God. And then suddenly that meat packing plant opens up under a new name, and it's all temporary foreign workers in there. So, we locked down every Western country. You had to follow the arrows on the floor and wear a mask everywhere you went. But the immigrants can come in and flood in because of the Trans-Pacific Partnership and take up all the jobs. And that's what's happened. And people are really pissed now. You know what I mean? And you're seeing the revolts, with the remigration now and stuff like that, to the point where even the EU's put out getting ready for the next migrant crisis. Like, we're going to deport the people that don't follow the rules. Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. In Canada, we're actually getting rid of people, not fast enough, anywhere near fast enough, but 2 quarters in a row, we've seen the population shrink. The first time since 1947. That's a good sign. I'll take it. If that's all we can get, that's at least going in the right direction. But we need to, really, like, we need to get rid of about 8 to 11 million people out of this country that are just, been flooded in so fast. Oh, we never have enough doctors and nurses. Gee, I wonder why when you bring in 1 million people a year. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. But what I'm saying is that no, everybody's going to be affected. Look, New Zealand, okay? I found out last night New Zealand does not produce any gas or oil at all. They've got days left. Days. Australia, I think they've got like something like 27 days or 45 days of gas and oil left. You know what I mean? And there's a whole bunch of, I think the Philippines is already out. Yeah, so like what I told you guys back in 2020, within 2 to 4 years, you were going to see 2 to 4 billion people starting to starve to death on the planet. I was right. Most of it's in the third world. But the fertilizer shortage globally right now, we're talking about 30 to 40% of the world's fertilizer off the market, right? The chain reactions that happen from that, right? New Zealand, if they make their own fertilizer, I can imagine they would make some, but if they don't have gas, they're not making any. If Australia doesn't have gas, it's not making any. Canada, yes, we're like the second or the largest potash supplier in the world, right? But we can only supply so much. You know what I mean? We've got one massive mine that supplies 80% of the fertilizer to the United States, right? The United States has fucked that up. So again, like again, all the food shortages, like I said, watch around February, and right around February, you started seeing, like disruptions. Mainly it's shown in inflation. But Trump's policies, have fucked up every country in the world. I don't know how that. Like, you have to be a special level of retard to do that, right? But again, the thing is if it'd be impressive if it wasn't so terrifying. You know what I mean? But the real thing is that it's on purpose. Again, every one of these world elites have been telling us how they want to depopulate the world because there's too many people. Best way to starve them out. That is the number one communist tool. Communist, progressive, globalism. It's all the same thing. It's just different forms of the same tyranny. Um, and the thing is that yes, people are going to lose everything. Even here in North America, yeah, we'll be probably hit last because Canada's sitting in probably one of the best positions in that kind of regard. But even at that, most of our oil goes for export. You know what I mean? Like, believe it or not, like here in Quebec, guess what? We buy our oil from Norway and Saudi Arabia. Why? I don't know. you know, Norway kind of makes sense because it is actually close in a sense, coming across the arc. But like I'm sure we get some oil from out west. But now, what I've been saying for years, and pretty much every Canadian's been saying for years, is that we should be buying, supply the entirety of Canada first, even if it was a little more expensive. That's fine. Open up the Hibernia plant. That was the whole point of opening up the Hibernia plant off the coast of Newfoundland. Like, use it as a domestic. Oh, sure, we'll pay a little more at the pump, but it's going to be domestic. But the thing is that we won't pay more at the pump forever. When you do these things domestically, okay, yes, you take a loss in the infrastructure building. You take a loss, the first probably few decades of doing this, right? Now, what it take to open the Hibernia plant, I don't know, but what it would do is give us sovereignty, at least in the oil, where, like everybody's starting to think about whether they should be in OPEC or not. And OPEC is one big problem that Canada has. I mean, it's a vine and a vice, right? It gives you access to the world markets in a lot of ways, and it simplifies the trade with the Swiss system and the petrodollar, right? You just trade in one currency. So yeah, where if you're selling oil to 20 different countries, 30 different countries, and you have to convert all those different currencies on a daily basis, that could be a bit of a pain in the ass. But at the end of the day, you're converting direct currencies, which probably will have a lot of volatilities to it, because some currencies are more stable than others. Um, as bad as the petrodollar is, it is still a pretty stable currency. It's on its way down. The biggest threat to the world is Donald Trump right now and his administration. And the elite side, like Israel and Donald Trump, like mainly Israel, because Donald Trump does whatever Israel wants, right? He sucks their dick, you know what I mean? But yeah, no, what I'm telling everybody is that this global crisis is manufactured the same way it was in 2008, the same way it was in 2020 or 2019, 2020. It's all the world elites do this to us, right? Whether they do it on purpose or no good crisis goes to waste, doesn't matter. They milk it to nudge it in the system they want, right? And it's never something that the people actually want. And it's never the greater good, It's just, yeah, like, I mean, the Trumps are making billions of dollars off of this, to the point where it's like, okay, yeah, they're gonna get Trump on, what do you call him? Who was the mob guy there? Al Capone. They're gonna get Trump on racketeering, like the whole Trump family. They're gonna get them on racketeering. Like, okay, it's better than nothing, but like, these people deserve the death penalty at this point. Like, I mean, that kind of levels of you. Most of these stakeholder capitalists do, like your George Soroses and all that. Like, how is George Soros and Trump different? You know what I mean? Like, let's destroy countries and make money. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's not just about the money. Like, I know, like with Trump, it's the biblical angle. Like that. That's why it doesn't make sense to a lot of people why he's doing what he's doing. It's because he's a religious fanatic and just he's one of those under the radar religious fanatics. But if you want to know what he's really about, listen to Paula White, listen to Hegseth. Mike Pompeo used to say the quiet part out loud. That's how I picked up on it. It's like, why would he do that? Oh, okay, he's one of those people. But he's also a greedy, egotistical game show host too, right? So there's that. But no, what I'm saying is that, like, don't ever think that I don't know what level I'm at. Like, don't ever think that I don't understand, like like the main reason why I took on this place when my brother moved out. I see gold. You know what I mean? Like I understand if you want to call it privilege. I hate that term, but if you want to, yeah, I understand that most people are not going to get this lucky. Even on a house this rickety. You know what I mean? Like this is awesome. Especially for the cheap price that I got it at. But it's cheap in a sense that financially, but I got to do all the work. I got to keep it. Like this is a family heirloom for all my relatives. You know what I mean? That's a hell of a responsibility to take on. You know what I mean? And my family, all my relatives, like when they see me doing the artwork and stuff like that, like they're very, very pleased with me. You know what I mean? They're like, wow. To the point where maybe in the future when I go to make an offer on it, if I ever have enough money, they might say, yeah, well, just keep it, and just take good care of it, right? Stuff like that. Or they might just say, okay, well, we'll lowball it. It's worth just so you can afford it. Like I'm 52 years old, so like I can't do a 10-year mortgage. You know what I mean? I might not even be alive by then. You know what I mean? So stay healthy. Like that's big, and that's what I'm getting at. Is before we get into all this stuff here, this is probably the most important thing about these World War III updates is to not be scared, but to be prepared. So if I was a little condescending, that's on me. Like that's I take responsibility for that, and I shouldn't do that. But my intention was to explain to people that wherever you're sitting right now, okay, when you look at your cupboard or your fridge, within the next couple of weeks, it's going to start to be getting low. And you may have a hard time refilling that. Not to scare you, but that's when I said 2 to 4 billion people were going to starve to death back in 2020, and then last year when Trump took office and he hit he did the tariff war. Like, look, people still don't get it. The tariff war, with all this other crazy stuff going on, people still haven't felt the full effects of this tariff war. That like it's going to take 2 years before you really notice it. And trust me, if you look at the numbers of how fucking devastating it is, you can understand why Gerald Celente says when all else fails, they take you to war. Because it's a good distraction. Because when everything fails, they'll blame it on, the global economy failed, well, we'll blame it all on Iran. But yeah, okay, they're a part of it, but it's really who started the war, right? Like, who kicked that can? You know what I mean? Like Israel will never take responsibility for any of the evils it's done. They're not capable. These people in general, I mean, I know it's not all of them, but as a group, they can't self-reflect. Even when they're torturing and killing you, they still lash out in pain as they strike you, as they say. They still say, well, we had to do it because we're the victims. Like, these people are that fucking brainwashed. If you look at, like, IDF atrocities, it's next level. Like, we went after Milosevic for a lot less. You know what I mean? It's unbelievable. Unbelievable what the Israelis do. These are, again, I know it's not all of them, but, like, they're evil. They're just, that desert mindset of theirs is just fucking pure evil. That's why I should be fucking isolated there. You know what I mean? Like, if people wanted Israel to survive, if you're one of those, Israel has the right to exist, or okay, fine, whatever. The easiest way to get them to survive is just not support them, so that they can't do these wars and all this shit. You know what I mean? And then they would have to actually just sit there and make peace with each other, and then just fucking build a wall around them and leave them all in there. Yeah, you know what I mean? They're insufferable. Oh my god. But anyway, I digress. But no, what I'm telling you guys is the shortage is going to hit everybody, and people are going to react badly, especially the normies that all they do is watch like sports ball. Even now, they're like, oh well, I don't really care. It's not affecting me. Well, it's like these people freak out so bad as soon as something goes wrong. You know what I mean? Like the layoffs, the stuff like we see that people can't handle that when they lose their jobs. You're watching a guy right now who's had over 100 jobs in his life and never been fired once. I've been laid off. Like I started, and I'm telling you this from my experience that like back in the 90s when I started in a recession, I was going through a job every about 6 to 12 weeks. I had to find a new job, and it always took me 2 to 3 weeks. You want to talk about struggle? Just enough money to pay my rent just in time, get a couple of groceries, and then bang, have to go look for another job. A stack of resumes like that. And even at that, we're nowhere near, that was nowhere near as bad as what we're dealing with now. But so I know what it's like to get the rug pulled. You know what I mean? And the first time it happens, it shocks you. The 57th time, you're like, well, okay, yeah, here's the procedure. As soon as you lose your job, go apply for unemployment. Don't wait a couple of weeks. Do it the day. That's it. Get your pink slip, or not your pink slip, but your yellow slip. Well, that's what we got in Canada. Get your whatever leave. Say, okay, yeah, you're laying me off. Don't swallow your fucking pride and go, because the sooner they tell you that you're not qualified for the unemployment insurance, go right to the welfare office. Don't even fuck. You have guys. I understand. The first time I ever had to go into a welfare office, it was fucking humiliating. It was. I get it. It's a hit on dignity, right? But I was desperate, and I had waited. I'd waited like 6 months, and I just I had no money at all. So I know what it's. I mean, I even slept out on the street a few times. This is when I was living in the city, right? Finally, I was just like, okay, I got to do something. Like just every place. Here's my. Sorry, I'm not even going to take your application. It's like, got a stack over there. Sorry, we're not hiring. We're not hiring. And I understand how demoralizing that is. It really kicks you in the nuts, right? And that's when you're down is when you need to be the most clear minded, not doing drugs and smoking dope and drinking yourself to death, right? Because you know what I mean. Like, don't make it any more miserable than it's going to be, because you can flip it, into something different. Okay, you have to downgrade your house because and I've seen it happen. You know what I mean? Like the .com bust, where I had friends. Again, this is 1990s money, right? I don't know what the equivalent would be now, but they go from like flipping burgers to like a $45,000 a year job. The wife has got a tech job. He's got the tech job for Nortel, JDS, Corral, all those companies, and every one of them got bought out, right? They all went under. As soon as they got the technology, they laid off everybody. And I remember telling all my friends in the tech sector that, yeah, they were rolling in money. They were buying houses and cars. And they're spending stupid. I'm like, it's not all of them, but most of them. And I remember I said, look, it's like mining. Anything that hires, like there was like 10,000 jobs a week, just all these people getting hired, right? And I remember listening to the news and every day, oh, they just hired 1,500 more people and 10,000 more people. I'm like, it's a bubble. I explained it like a mining. I said, once they've stripped the mine, you go home. You see this in mining towns all the time. The mining town booms, but then as soon as the mine closed down, everybody's a drunk alcoholic, ODing, and deaths of despair like crazy, because they just, oh well, I lost my job now. Now I got to destroy myself, right? Because they get so depressed and all that. And the thing is you don't want to have lifestyle problems when the system goes down. So if you're doing drugs, now's the time to stop while it's easy. If you're an alcoholic, now's the time to stop while it's easy. If you smoke dope, yes, that dope. Weed is bad. Weed triggers mental health. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this out. You can just look. Since Trudeau legalized marijuana and the mental health crisis that followed, and almost everybody that's mentally ill does weed. And I only made this observation after seeing several people that I know who smoke weed chronically and were always depressed, never did anything. They quit, and 6 months later, like their whole life is like they're a totally different person for the better. They'll never go back to it. All their anxiety's gone because it's like all these people that do weed. It's like, oh, I'm doing it for my anxiety. You don't have anxiety; you have withdrawals. Like once you understand it, and again, I know, so well, you're not an expert on it because I got to defend weed because it's non-addictive. It's addictive. If you're doing it chronically, it's addictive. Like anything can be addictive. Water can be addictive. You know what I mean? But water's good for you. Most of it, anyway. But what I'm getting at is that I want you to take care of yourself and prepare yourself to lose everything. And what would you do if you did? Make that plan now. Because when you see these people lose their jobs, the husband loses his job, but the wife still has a job. And then, it's like he can't find a job that's equivalent and he takes a lesser job. Usually the wife is not happy about that, but, they're okay. At least, one income can really stabilize the family. When they both lose their jobs, then it's like they lose the house. The wife goes on a spending spree. It seems like as soon as people get hard times, there's a study that showed this, and we'll get into this in a second. But again, it's a part of it. It's a part of the World War III stuff. Because it affects people, right? But when people don't, and you see this with welfare recipients and stuff like that, like if they were paid every 2 weeks, they would be better with their money than getting paid once a month. Because you get a big one lump sum a month, right? And what happens? They go out, they spend it all in one shot. They go out, they might pay the rent, do their groceries and whatever, but then they go out and buy like Nikes and fucking shit like that, and buy all the stuff, and then suddenly about halfway through the month they have zero money left. And again, the system knows about this, right? Where it's like, okay, I'm only getting paid every 2 weeks. I gotta ration this till my next payday, kind of thing, right? And I understand the why they do the once a month because here's one check, but they really should do it like a paycheck if they're going to do that. But they should have workfare to get these people off welfare and contribute to the economy, right? But anyway, I digress. But what I'm saying is there's a pattern there that's very recognizable, and that's what I was trying to get at yesterday. Is that you need to plan for that now. You need to plan for your empty shelves and your kids asking you, "What are we going to eat next?" You know what I mean? Like that's going to be very gut wrenching to tell your kids that we're going to have to go to the food bank. I'll see what I can bring back. When you have to compete with all these migrants that are basically ravaging every food bank, whether they need it or not. These people, they do this. They go to this food bank, they get another fake address, they go to that food bank. The scams, they openly admit this stuff, right? Like these people are just insufferable. They got to go home. You know what I mean? And they will take they'll take. You see this in Europe. You don't see this as much now. Well, we do have some of that around here, but it's disappearing. Where it's like, for example, in the neighboring town, there's a guy. He's never there. He's like, just leave your money. He just puts the prices on stuff. Just leave your money in the little container. Grab a bale of hay, grab a feed bag, whatever you're gonna do. Nobody robs them. You know what I mean? You see these like little like in the Netherlands and stuff like that, where like it's like eggs and cheese and whatever. It's a little stuff like that. You go and you just leave There's nobody there. It's just a little kiosk. You just go and take what you want and you just throw your money there. Honor system. Nobody steals the money out like that. Then you get all these migrants that come in. They film it. Like, oh, we're gonna take everything, ha, 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 and we'll take the money too. You know what I mean? And because the authorities are too politically correct to do anything about it, yeah, that's the world we're in. And now we're about to see probably millions and millions of people empty out of the Middle East, including Israelis. Fuck them, but we don't want any of them, let alone them, in our countries. They fuck their country up. We don't want no use of us letting them fuck ours up any worse. You know what I mean? Anyway, but yeah. So if I came off ranty, that I apologize. But it is important that you understand what I'm getting at is that everybody's going to be affected, no matter what now, because again, 3 weeks with fuel shortages is going to cost a lot of jobs. People, I call it, I can't make it work. You better get to work here or you're fired because you got this stressed out boss that's dealing with all these problems too. And he's just, if you've ever worked for a hothead boss, you'll know what I mean. I've had a couple where they just come in the morning, they start fucking yelling at people you don't even know what about. Oh, that's not right. A lot of times, you know what it is? Too much of that. They're hungover, right? They're all bitchy. And I'll tell guys like, yeah, just because you're hungover, don't fucking bitch at me. like I stand my ground. Like, and when they go, you're fired. No, I'm not. You're just drunk. Shut up. And they know I'm right. Like I don't yell at people unless they really, really deserve it. There's only a few times where I've had to put people in their place like that. Because if you let them do it, they'll never self reflect. They'll never realize what they're doing wrong, and they'll never correct themselves. So, like you got to. It's not fight fire with fire, but you've got to meet them where they're at. You got to kind of show them their delusion a bit, and you got to know how to do it right. Because usually there's an improvement after. But that's why I tell people, okay, I might not be a perfect person, but I know what's not going to get me. You know what I mean? Like I know what's not going to get me. Like I'm not gonna fall into that trap. Because to me, I look at it, it's just stuff. It sucks because you accumulate stuff and you lose stuff. Like, it's just stuff at the end of the day. And I know that that's a big, like to lose a house, but you have to make peace with it now. You have to put that in your mind that if I was to lose the dwelling I'm at, whether you're renting or you actually own the house, what would I do? What's my backup plan? What some people I've seen do is they seen the writing on the wall with back in the 90s with the .com bust, right? They're like, I'm going to sell my house now and downgrade, right? And move into an apartment or something, whatever. Yeah, it sucked, but they did that. And they did it in time. So when they did lose their jobs, the lower paying jobs that they had to go out and get was enough that that it was rough, but it was survivable. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying, okay, just run out and put your house on the market. What I'm saying is, have a backup plan just for anything, like the terror attacks that are starting, yes, they're terror attack lights right now. Because that's, like I say, it's going to be the crazies and the sympathizers. But it is going to be a thing. It is going to be a thing because it is a thing. We had another big fire in Trump. Again, it was the same in 2019, what I called the tanker wars and the industrial wars, right? Suddenly there's all these accidents, just a massive uptick. And it's not just, the pregnant lady effect where when a woman gets pregnant, suddenly she notices all the other pregnant ladies. No, industrial accidents are, they're right now they're low, right? The average is 2,700 industrial accidents a year on average in the States or something. Or sorry, 200 something. And then in 2019 went up to 2,700. It went 10 times fold. So when you see a refinery fire in Texas just a day or two after big attacks on the oil in Russia, gee, I wonder, right? When you see again, the air traffic controller, that one was probably an incident, with the airplane. LaGuardia Airport there basically smacks, the two pilots were killed when the fire truck came out onto the runway just as they were landing, right? The JRC 900 or whatever. RCJ 900. Okay? Most likely an accident, but you never know, right? The controller was like, I fucked up. I just got people killed. Again, but that's part of it's still part of the problem. Why? Because that guy was way overtasked for what he could do. It's the same with doctors and nurses with malpractice. How many hours did they work that day? How many hours did they work that week? Doing 7-day stretches, 16 hours a day, and tell me you're not going to make mistakes? Yeah. Why are they working 16 hours a day? Oh, it's cheaper because these people are on salary, right? So it's like they can work, they could slave them as much as possible. Like salary sounds good if you're working like 40 hours a week. But the thing about salary is that when you're on a salary instead of by the hour, it's like we're going to pay you this much, but you're on call 24/7, right? They pay you almost enough to make you think that you're getting a good deal. You know what I mean? Um, Nobody should be working 16 hours a day on anything. Like even if it's something you really love to do, no, you should be resting. You know, like 16 hours a day. If you can't make a living on 16 hours a day, I've done it before, guys. I've done it for years. I used to work 103 hours a week, and just for perspective, there's only 168 hours in a week. I did that for years. Yeah, yeah. Gee, why was I all fucked up, right? Um, yeah, it would have been more relaxing to go to prison. Like I swear. But what I'm telling you is you got to prepare for the nasty that's coming, because we could lose everything. The world leaders want us to lose everything. They do not care about us. Look, these people are dying. In these airstrikes, civilians are dying, and every time these people die, the world leaders make money, including Trump. What I mean? Like it's that bad. It's that bad. Anyway, I digress. So hopefully you guys accept the apology for me ranting, whatever. But my intentions were to get you guys to prepare, because who knows, right? Uh, so a 10-day ceasefire and the 15-point peace plan. Uh, like the Americans have put out the most unreasonable peace plan possible, knowing the Iranians are not going to accept it, and the Iranians obviously didn't accept it. They're just like, no. And we're going to have a 10-day ceasefire. What Trump is telling you is that the assets are so destroyed that they can't continue fighting. They have to regroup and wait for new tankers to come in. Guys, it's hard to verify what has been destroyed and stuff like that. I get there's these people that no, the United States is so invincible. Any claim Iran makes is fake, which there is a lot of fake stuff out there, so we don't know, right? And it's only and I watch these Air Force pilots, Navy pilot guys. They're veterans now. They're whatever, and they're obviously pro U.S. right? Like they're Iran's Air Force is in order to be met. Blah blah blah. We're going to analyze this. But when there is where an airfield like the F-15 is getting shot down, they covered that, and they were just like, well, we're going to go with the official story that they were accidentally shot down. So here's all the excuses why they would have been shot down. They had their transponders off, so they weren't identified properly. So it's probably that. And then, of course, they weren't expecting to get shot in the ass over their own territory, blah, 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 that type of thing, right? So they'll play it down, right? So they can accept that, but they can't accept for a second that an Iranian missile can take out an F-15 or an F-18 or whatever. Even though there's footages, Donald Trump saying that we have complete air superiority there, and CENTCOM, same thing. Oh yes, it's complete superiority. Yes, that's the PR guys, right? The CENTCOM guys, the official government PR, right? And they don't confirm any shootdowns other than the F-15s. They had no choice, right? But everything else, no, nothing ever gets shot down. They did cop to a couple of the drones, which the drones are going down pretty fast, and that is probably the most critical component of accurate targeting, even more than the satellites. The satellites, you have a window of opportunity, stuff that we'll talk about that stuff, but satellites, as amazing as they are, they still have limitations. Hence why you need drones and AWACS to cover the voids, right? But the thing is that yeah, you do see footage of it looks like a Super Hornet or whatever, like almost getting whacked by like a Manpad missile. And the same with an F-15, you see them like basically just dodging these missiles, right? And I think my assessment of air defense systems has been pretty accurate over the years. And it doesn't really matter what time frame you pick of air defense systems, whether it's early air defense systems or air defense systems today. They, it seems like, for example, the Ukraine war and the Russians and the Ukrainians, they have about a 50-50 hit rate. Shooting down cruise missiles or drones or whatever. It's about 50-50. And aircraft, about 50-50. The Syrians, when they were shooting Israeli and American cruise missiles down, about 50-50, right? The Iron Dome, okay, yeah, the Israelis, yeah, it's a 98% success rate. It's maybe 50%. The Patriots, I think, is probably one of the worst, with probably about 32-50%. You have to fire 3 missiles for 1 kill on average, right? So 2 to 3 missiles. So you're looking at 50 to 33.33333%, right? That's not that great. It's not that great. So the Iranians, they're probably got about, like the 30 to 50% hit rate for missiles fired. It's just, you have to understand, it's like air defense is very complicated. This is why the Iranians have a no-fly zone. It's because a lot of times they shoot out whatever is flying because they can't distinguish whether it's an airliner or less otherwise identified. They can't make the distinction between the airliners and the fighter jets or the drones. Hence why you saw the Israelis use when the Syrians accidentally shot down a Russian electronic warfare aircraft that was on a landing approach, completely unaware. Well, the Israelis hid their F-15s, in between it, right? So the missile would target that before their F-15s, Yeah, like the Israelis are dirty, right? Like they're dirty, But that's what they did. It was clever, but it was dirty. And yeah, that's why the Iranians just everybody, don't fly when during the strikes because if it's in the air, we know it's not ours. So that actually is a good tactic. So then it's just a matter of tracking, locking onto it, and boxing it in. But that said, as soon as you turn on your radar, they know where you are, right? So you're not seeing a lot of air defense systems getting taken out by the United States because of the cat and mouse game of air defense systems. You turn it on, you turn it off, you turn it on, you turn it off. Now, where they get them is, okay, well, we know the air defense is in that area. And what we're going to do is we're going to send a drone. Okay, the drone got shot down, but we saw it. We know where it is. We can program. We got coordinates before the drone went down. Then we can follow up with missile strikes or satellite, and it just really hone in on it. So there's a lot of cat and mouse going on. And for example, I don't know if I put it on here or not, but if not, if it's on here, I'll, whatever, I'll cover it now. 1991, the Americans were using satellites to find Scud launchers and drones, and the satellite coverage now is probably about 4 or 5 times more coverage, and probably about 4 or 5 times more 10 times better resolution. Maybe not 10 times, but at least 4 or 5 times better resolution than what it was in 1991. Because in 91, the Americans barely found any Scud launchers. They destroyed very, very few, if any at all. And they were using the F-111 aardvarks to find these things, electronic warfare aircraft like that. And again, they like for the mission that they're flying right now, that's the aircraft that should be flying over Iran. Okay. A-10s once you clear the air defense, but it should be the F-111, F-117 stealth, but the F-111 and the A-6 Prowlers and the A-6 Intruders. Why? Because they have the range to do that stuff, right? You can basically fly out of Europe with an F-111. It's an older aircraft, but you basically, the aardvark was designed, basically, the British had them too. Those were designed to take on electronic warfare stuff, right? Same as the A6 Intruders and the A6 Prowler. The A6 Prowler would probably, the thing about it, it's not stealth. but it has the range, right? So that's like, again, you're probably going to see those things come back into service because there's just these short range F-15s or F-16s and F-18s. Um, they're just not viable for that kind of conflict. Yeah, like you're too reliant on air to air refueling, right? So, this is where, like I say, the Russians, like their Su-34 takes off, you know, fires the weapons, from Russian territory into the entirety of pretty much Ukraine, wherever they want, because they have really long range weapons, but they have aircraft that can stay in the air for 10 hours, with a drop tank, right? That's, they're not traveling very fast, only maybe about 200 and some odd miles an hour, but, like they can stay up there and loiter, right? That's what the A-10 can do. But the problem with the A-10, it's slow, it's good down low, but it's a tank buster. It's not really meant for taking out, sophisticated air defense systems. But the thing is that now the kill chain is Canadian Prepper was talking about is basically multi data where 91, you guys probably remember the Gulf War, that they were short on aircraft. They didn't have enough F-15s at the time. I think there's only been maybe about 500 F-15s made total, right? Japan has some of them. UAE has some of them. Israel definitely has some, and the United States, and maybe one other, maybe Kuwait, they might have some, right? But they didn't have enough, so they had to bring in some old F4 Phantoms. They brought back the A6 Intruder. The Prowlers were fairly new at the time. They were basically the upgraded A6 Intruders. Same aircraft, 4 seats instead of 2, and just more capabilities, right? Like the A6 Prowler was the most advanced electronic warfare fighter bomber. Well, you wouldn't call it a fighter, but medium bomber ever built, right? Until the F-35 comes along. But the F-35 doesn't have, the wing area and the payloads of the, of something like the Prowler. So even with all the advantages they had in 91, they had a hard time finding Scud launchers, right? Now it's a lot easier. This is why they're getting so many. They've destroyed about 400 launchers from the, or 380, 390, basically rocket launchers from the Iranians, because the satellites are pretty much, coverage every couple of minutes. They're going over. And then you've got all these drones. You have even more drones. And then you've got the AWACS and everything like that. So you have all the stuff to detect, right? So and plus with AI and all that, they could find these things about 100 times faster. So in 91, it was almost impossible to catch a Scud, because they mainly used them at night, and you would see them, the plumes firing, but it took about, I'm going to say it properly, I guess I didn't write it down. But anyway, it took the average Scud crew about a half an hour to get ready, and about 10 or 15 minutes to pack up and leave, right? So, like, if you look at an MLRS, you basically, might take 20 minutes, half an hour to get your targeting, confirm your targeting. And then once you fire, you can pretty much put the thing into gear and roll away, right? And then reload somewhere else. And it might take you half an hour to reload or whatever, that type of thing. So the rocket systems, like these little M trucks and stuff like that like Russia has, those things, yeah, they fire a volley of 40 rockets in like, a tenth of a second. You know what I mean? They just fire and Stalin's orchestra, right? But the thing is it takes another probably 45 minutes to hand load each one of those rockets, hook them up, and whatever. But the Scuds stuff like that, they take a little, like you got to fuel up the rocket. It might take up to an hour, to fuel up the rocket if it's liquid fuel. A lot of these rockets still are liquid fuel. The solid fuel rockets, you drive them out, takes about 5-10 minutes to get the rocket into position. Providing it's already programmed, you fire it, and you drive away. You pack up and you drive away. So like they're advancing on that, right? But yeah, the U.S. is becoming basically has been determined to be insolvent, meaning like Trump has made $4 billion, off of this chaos so far this year. Now, okay, who's going to win the war? The United States, Israel, or Iran? It's 100% going to be Iran. And I'll tell you why. If this is true. According to Professor Morandi, who's an Iranian, now, I know the Gulf states don't pay stupid amounts of money for their fuel, right? Because they make the money off the export. They don't have, it's basically the oil is heavily subsidized by export, right? Meaning what they're making off the oil markets, right now, Iran is actually making money off the oil market in the sense that they're making a lot of money off of the basically they got the tolls to, okay, sure, we'll let your tanker through, but there's a fee, right? So I don't know if that just covers the the Iranian Navy's fees or whatever to pay the guys for the day or whatever, but they're making money off of that. Plus they make money off the gas and the oil that they've sold, and they were able to subsidize it to that Iranians pay. Get this, guys. What's gas at right now? I think it's over $2 a liter here, which would be about $8 a gallon. In the States, I think it's like $2 or $3, or sorry, $4 or $5 in some areas. I don't know. It's different all over the place, but it's high. They pay 1 cent a gallon or a liter, which doesn't matter. Like it's 1 fucking cent. Wow, can you imagine filling your vehicle up for like $1? Like wow. If that's true, I don't know. I've heard of some of the Gulf states like 10-15 cents a gallon. Your economy would boom so much. You know what I mean? Like Jean Chrétien, as bad as he was, as a liberal, one of the things is, and all the conservatives were like, like don't, like free market gas and oil, right? It'll be cheaper. It's not necessarily cheaper. Like a lot of this free market capitalism shit is bullshit. It's not always cheaper to go capitalist. It isn't. Deregulation isn't always cheaper, and deregulation isn't always the best option either. Because it doesn't really work like that. The supply and demand thing, yes, sure, but like you got to break an egg to make an omelet. You have to have safety. You have to have checks and balances, right? Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, if they got that, like yeah, they're going to be fine for a while, and they're still getting gas and oil. Like not all their gas and oil is in one area of the country. It's just their export stuff is like in Cargo Island and places like that. It's on the coast. Okay, so they hit Prince Sultan Air Base again. This time, again, people only get injured. Nobody gets killed. But they may have lost another 3 to 4 KC-135s, bringing you up to a total in 1 month. The United States and Israel have lost 11 to 15 fuel tankers. That is a massive hole in capabilities. When you consider how many fuel tankers they don't have. Like the Americans only have about 110 of these fuel tank. Maybe they have some more in mothball or whatever. But like if it's in mothball, sitting in the desert, covered, that plane's covered in tar. Trust me, I've helped take a mothballed GR5 Harrier that was covered in tar. Like desert covered in tar, for preservation. If you know what I'm talking about, like whenever they mothball aircraft in the desert, they cover them in tar to protect them. And anyway, that will take you a long time to get all that scraped off there. Like there's a way to do it, but like something that like you're looking at a month's worth of work right there. So even if they had say 500 old KC-135s sitting there, how many of them even still have their engine nacelles full? You know what I mean? Like you'd have to go AZ the entire aircraft. You're not just going to put it back in the like it'll take months to get these aircraft up and going out of mothball. But in Desert Storm, I mean, again, they brought back F4 Phantoms, gave them a new paint job. Because there wasn't enough, so they used to have 4 Phantoms in the F8 Crusaders, the Corsairs. You know what I mean? Corsairs and Crusaders. The small little ugly. Yeah, they brought those back because they didn't have enough for the air campaign, and also too, the amount of cruise missiles fired in desert, like the entirety of the Iraq War. They've already exceeded that so far. You know what I mean? Like when you let that sink in. But in the Iraq War, there wasn't really that many things that required cruise missiles. Like, you know what I mean? Hellfire missiles and stuff like that. Yeah, they fired a lot of that because it was mostly tanks and stuff. But yeah, I digress. So, 10 infantry people possibly injured in 3 to 4, another 3 to 4 KC-135s, and apparently some drones possible. Okay, Israelis, this is what they're saying. When the air raid siren blows, you've got about 15 seconds to get to shelter. 15 fucking seconds. That's it. So that means if you only got 15, the air raid sirens, that's a 15-second warning, meaning the missile's 15 seconds up. That tells me something. That tells me that, the Iranians' strategy of taking out, blinding the radars, meaning you can't see this stuff coming in until it's way too late to do anything about it. But who the fuck is going to be able to make it to a shelter, a viable shelter, in 15 seconds? But yet nobody's getting killed, right? Nobody's getting killed. Yeah. Buy that for $1. Yeah. So CENTCOM saying they're going to attack steel manufacturing, aluminum, nuclear. They're going to hit the nuclear sites again in Iran. Iran is saying, you do it, and we will do the same thing, including the Dimona nuclear power plant. You have to understand, like I talked about yesterday, the Dimona nuclear power plant, all around it is where they manufacture, like, not only I can imagine, the fuel rods for the power plant, but also where they enrich for weapons grade uranium and stuff like that for the nuclear weapons. And I can imagine for depleted uranium shells and all that stuff probably comes from there. So, like, the Iranians have been targeting the weapons industries and stuff like that. But, yeah, I digress. So, depending on what, again, Trump saying we're going to have a 10-day ceasefire on a 15-point peace plan, but then we're going to hit all this stuff tonight or tomorrow, whatever. U.S. George Bush on the way. I thought it was already there. But, so the other aircraft carrier. Okay, so the aircraft carrier that looked like it had damage on it might have been the Abraham Lincoln, according to some of what you guys are saying. So I guess I was looking at the wrong aircraft carrier. A lot of times when they talk about stuff on the news, they'll show you footage of an aircraft carrier and they'll be talking about one, but it might be another one. That's the problem with mainstream media or any media, is like, up to the minute news is not always the most accurate. But there is footage of the U.S. Gerald Ford at the dock sitting there. So my hunch is that when do the Iranians target that thing? Because it's going to be there for probably months. Um, I'm sure they're like just offloading most of the sailors that are so pissed off that want to go home that they broke the ship. I am hearing reports of like basically U.S. military, if you want to call it mutiny, if you want to call it step down, if you want to, that are refusing orders from Trump, or the administration saying no, we can't do that because they're not outright saying we're not going to go fight, but they're like, well, no, we can't do that because you'll get us all killed. You know what I mean? Like they're not going to deliberately follow orders that are going to get you killed. 100%. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, no, we can't do it that way. That's not a viable option. We have to do this instead of that, right? So what I'm telling you is that uh, the beginning stages of a military coup in the state, which is going to be a very strange day for Americans to see their government, like basically banana republic style. That's what happens when you have no rule of law, right? We don't put pedophiles, Epstein pedophiles, in jail. We let the government, these people make billions of dollars manipulating, and they all did it. It's not. It's just Trump does it out loud. The stock market and all that stuff. Okay, apparently the Israeli Air Force base, the Houthis hit it. Which the Houthis have been sitting quiet, so it's hard to say. But yeah, because I think they're just itching though. They're itching. They're like, oh, when do we get to sink something? Because I know, okay, the Iranians are showing restraint on the aircraft carrier issue. They're not sinking them, and it's not because they can't. It's definitely not because they can't. You guys saw the footage of oh yeah, and another U.S. embassy was hit by a rocket. I forget which Gulf state, but I think it might have been Iraq. Might have been Iraq, because the Iraqi embassies have been getting hit and harassed with drones and stuff like that. Now, how much damage is done, I don't know, but I think a rocket may have hit one, but a drone for sure. But again, I think that's what the boots on the ground's all about. Is okay, we got to get all of our guys out of there. You know what I mean? We got to do like air extractions because again, you got protesters outside of every embassy. You're starting to get rebel groups surrounding the embassies and the motels and stuff like that. These guys, these soldiers that are not on their base, even if they have their rifles and ammo in the room, they're not going to be able to put up a long fight against an insurgency encircling the motels. They'll just light the base of the motel on fire, right? They're just like, yeah, we'll burn them out. It doesn't matter if they have the high ground mortars. They'll kill everybody inside. So you're going to have to air extract, like everybody's going to be evacuated rooftop style by Blackhawks. You know what I mean? Take them back to the carrier, to the, whatever. That said, there's a report, take it with a grain of salt, again. 6 landing craft have been destroyed, smaller landing craft. Whose exactly? But I wouldn't doubt it. Now this footage, if this footage is real, a U.S. ammo ship was destroyed. What kind of ship, I don't know, but it does look like pretty real footage. It's hard to say. CRAM, okay, yeah. Here's why I'm going to tell you why the Iranians are restraining themselves on the aircraft carrier thing. Okay, so Oldenburg class destroyers, there's 81 of them total. That's the whole U.S. Navy. That's what they have for destroyers. The U.S. Independence, which is a minesweeper destroyer, it's the tri-hull one. They have 1 or 3 of those. The Zimwalls, I think they had 2 of those, but they're so goddamn expensive that there's no way you can run them. Like it's $1 million a shell, something ridiculous like that, $1 million a shell. So I don't think those are in the conflict at all. But the U.S. independence is somewhere in the region, I think. Corvettes, they have probably about the same amount of corvettes. And then the Tongaroga class, these are the double ender Ollieburgs, as I call them, where they got a gun at big naval gun at. These are the super destroyers. They only have a handful of those. Then they have about 68 to 69 um, Virginia class and submarines. I don't know how many of the Los Angeles class they have left, and three Seawolves, and then 14 Ohio class boomer subs. Right, so that's what the Americans have there. So minesweepers, all that, corvettes, triage, Wasp class carriers. I think they have about 6 of those. They have 11 aircraft carriers all total. One out of commission. You know, the top aircraft carrier is out of commission. The best of the best. Okay, it's already out of the fight. It didn't even last a month. Didn't even last a month. And then the shitter was full. You know what I mean? Dryers got fired and the shitter was full. You know, like people are going to dismiss. Well, yeah, but it's still viable. It's just they got to fix this. Yeah, but they got to fix stuff. Like it doesn't matter. Like if you're on a submarine, okay, and a part breaks while you're under the water, okay, well, it's just a busted pipe. It's just one pipe. The rest of the submarine's fine. But that one busted pipe can fucking sink the ship, right? You know, it's just one filter that's not working. Yeah, and suddenly everybody dies of hypoxia. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. If the shitter backs up on a submarine, you're having a real bad day. You're having a really, really bad day. You know, like all these little sea valves and stuff like that. All that stuff is a really, really big job to keep it going, right? And this is the ultimate test. Like the 1950s, okay, a lot of those aircraft were high maintenance, but they were easy to work on. The aircraft we have now, like you take like an F-35. Yeah, you land. For every 1 hour flown, it's probably about 30 hours of maintenance. It takes 2 days to turn around these aircraft. So you're talking about a 10-hour day, 300 hours of maintenance, right? So when you land the aircraft, there's like a lot of parts. They just like, for example, the engines. They can pull them out, put a new engine in, and work on that engine and get it ready to go again. So a lot of these aircraft have multiple engines. The Avro Aero started this, I think, where they mounted the engines on rails so you could swap them out in half an hour. I mean, if you've ever seen the mighty Iroquois engine, that thing's like 30 feet long. Like it's a huge engine, and they basically, they could swap it out in half an hour, right, for quick maintenance. But working on the engine will take you 3 days, you know what I mean, or a week. You know, so you have like I think with the Aero they had something like 4 sets of engines for every aircraft, just to keep them flying, right? Oh, the F-35s, the F-15s, all that. F-4 Phantoms, the same thing. F-18s, same thing. You swap out the engine and you put a new engine, off you go. Unless it's something really, like, okay, here's just the regular routine maintenance. Okay, we could fly for another, say, 40 hours before we have to pull that engine out. But that's kind of how they do it. You get the quick turnaround times. If not, they just leave the engine in and work on the aircraft, but it's a lot easier to work on the engines on an engine stand, right? So maintenance, there's lots of videos on aircraft maintenance and stuff like that and how they do stuff. And, like it's the same thing when I worked in the aviation museum, like, like if we were working on a giant Pratt and Whitney, turbine engine, like, okay, yeah, the museum, we worked at the speed of smell because it was, on a tighter budget and whatever. But you could get an idea of, what the ground crews would have to do. You got 3 guys working on the engine. One guy works on this section of the engine, that section, whatever. And then the other guy works on airframe stuff. He works on this section, the fuel, again, everybody has their compartments, right? So you might have 30 guys working on one aircraft at a time. With an F-35, I don't know what a standard maintenance crew is. On a soft Gripen, it's 3 guys, right? And then you could get train up other people in 15 minutes how to fuel the aircraft, stuff like that. Do all the remedial tasks to like the average grunt can do that, right? But let's talk about the CRAM. So the CRAM is basically, you see them on all kinds of warships. Sometimes there's 2 of them on there, more. Most of them have at least one. Some of the Olliebergs have completely gotten rid of all their CRAMs. Uh, in favor of like shooting down everything with missiles and just the main gun. Okay, CRAM. The best way to describe it is R2D2 with a minigun, right? And I heard somebody say that, but it was like it's stuck. I'm like, I love it, you know. But when you saw that drone attack on the U.S. embassy, where you're and you just see like a streak of fucking lead going, you know, tracers going across the sky at 4,500 rounds a minute. That is what's protecting the ships. Okay, that's what you shoot down low-flying drones and cruise missiles with, right? Where your regular Pack 3 or Pack 6 Sea Sparrows or whatever, or forget what what's the new anti-shipping missile. We have them, the Americans have them. But anyway, you can shoot down helicopters, aircraft, and incoming missiles. Problem is sea skimming missiles are really hard to shoot down because targeting low to the waterline, that confuses the radar. So you switch typically to the CRAMs and you pump that lead out. And the thing, you know, like it's got like the dome on it, radar dome on it, and whatever. But what did I say? How these aircraft carriers are going to be sunk? Well, here's what's happening with the drones. When the drones come in, they're too slow and too low to target with typically the anti-shipping. This was known with the Houthis, right? And when they do this, okay, they're low enough off the sea skimming that they have to resort to either the naval gun or the CRAM because you just can't target. And when they're in too close, you can't track them fast enough that low to be able to lock into them. So you pretty much have to face them head on with this ammo. The problem is, the vice of this is, or the vine of this is that the CRAM is really quick to respond. It's semi-automated for the most part, and it swing around and it's just like zapping bugs, right? Which is great. The problem is, and this is the biggest Achilles heel of the thing, you got 20 seconds. 20 seconds. So they figure at best you could shoot down 5 drones or cruise missiles. At best. Okay? Now I want you to think of the stockpiles of anti-shipping missiles that the Iranians must have and the Houthis have. Like, the Houthis have nowhere near what the Iranians have, but it's the same technology, and it's reversed Russian technology and American technology. Basically, these anti-shipping Soviet-style and Chinese-style anti-shipping missiles, especially the Chinese ones, these ones are fairly, you know, they're probably from the 1990s, so they're fairly accurate, right? So, really comes down to is electronic warfare jamming for the radar, for the warships to survive. Because if you send 6 drones, you know, now mind you, the naval gun, well, let's talk about the 127 millimeter naval gun. Yeah, they're pretty damn good, but you most of the time only have 150 rounds or so on board the ship, maybe 500 if you're lucky. You might get 10 kills out of that. So what happens if they send 25 drones from multiple directions at any one destroyer? They're going to get you on the reload because it's going to take you 5 to 10 minutes to reload the CRAM, right? That's the fastest it can be done. Once the CRAM's down and you're under the arc of the Pack 3 and Pack 6 missiles, there's no stopping. You know, like Dead Reckoning will probably be good enough for the, like you won't even need accurate targeting at that point. To the point, like again, where last year, the Houthis basically, turn on another heater in here, it's starting to get damp. It's funny, midday it gets really damp in here. But the Houthis made the aircraft, 2 aircraft carriers swerve so hard to miss be missed by anti-shipping missiles last year that they lost two CF-18s basically rolling off the deck. Now, that said, they don't have to, and this is something that's very important to know, they don't have to destroy an aircraft carrier to put it out of commission. They just have to get the thing to go on a list. When a ship lists, this is called listing, leaning, listing, naval term, right? More than 3 degrees, you can't land an aircraft on there. Like 3 degrees doesn't sound like much, it's probably about that. But then you hit that, that aircraft will hit so freaking, like, you'll bounce off that, collapse a wheel and roll and whatever. Make it list any more than that, the ship's out of commission. So you can see the advantages that the Iranians are going to have when they make that decision to sink these aircraft carriers. Why haven't they done it? I don't know. The U.S. Gerald Ford, if it's emptied out of people, now's the time to sink it because, yes, people will be pissed at. It'll do two things. It won't appease the Iranian people because the Iranian people want to kill every sailor. They want to kill every American right now. You're murdering their people, right? And why? You know what I mean? Professor Morandi, again, sounds like they got a hit on his life now. And again, he's the pro-Iranian propaganda. I get that. But he seems like a fairly genuine guy in his position, right? He's not, he's not a snake oil salesman. But basically what he was saying is like all these people that were protesting the Ayatollah and stuff like that, mainly the youth that were out protesting, he said, because here's the government using all this money to buy all this weaponry when we want this social program, that social program, down with the Ayatollah, blah, blah, blah. Now that they see that the Americans actually are bombing them and killing their people, they're like, geez, thank God, they're out there. Iranians in mass are out there basically protesting in favor of their soldiers, saying thanks for investing in the stuff to keep us safe, or we'd be all fucking dead and vaporized by now. A lot of people don't understand. Like the Iranians, they need this war to go on. They're winning. Now mind you, let's define winning. Winning is not total victory. That's not what it looks like. It's the guy who wins is the guy who could tolerate the most losses. You're racing to the bottom is what you're doing, right? So who's going to stomach more losses right now? Sure, the Iranians could surrender, they could do this, they could do that, but they would be enslaved. We saw what happened to Iraq and Afghanistan, right? The Taliban never gave up, but the Taliban never had the ability to really fight back. Now I'm thinking the Taliban is going to be, maybe trade in some goats for some cruise missiles. You know what I mean? Look, the Houthis did it. 2010, 2012, when Obama was pounding the shit out of the Houthis, and none of the Democrat people none of the liberals seemed to care. And when Trump took over, and he kept doing it, nobody seemed to care. And then all of a sudden, bang! One day, these goat herders, like Taliban with cruise missiles. I love that saying. That's what Canadian Prepper says, and it's like, yeah, you couldn't sum it up any better. But these guys are getting very right now. The Houthis are probably where technologically advanced as what the Iranians were in 2005 to 2010. Well, maybe 2010, right? Which in 2010, if you were going to take out Iran, that was the time to do it, right? But they spent so much time on Syria. Syria really put up a fight. You got to admire the Syrian people for, having to fight 1,100 different jihadi groups backed by the United States, Israel, and all the Gulf states, and half of Europe. And they held out in a 10-year war. That's fucking amazing. Or more than that, 12-year war, whatever it was. And I have a hunch that we could probably see the Iranians, if they get a bit of a reprieve, at the rate they're going, probably next month, they're probably going to start to back the Syrians again, and we could see the return of Assad 2.0. If he wants to, it's like, okay, well, technically he's still the legitimate leader, the guy that's in charge. He was put in there by the United States and Israel, the Al Qaeda guy. So he's not really a legitimate leader, right? It's a junta government, but his mercenaries won. So you know what I mean. But we'll wait and see. But I have a hunch. And once you get a super PAC between Syria and Iran, that's it for the rest of the Middle East. Like no, like Syria is never going to give up its chemical warfare weapons again. The Iraqis will probably join in as solidarity. Like the Iraqis, look, they've already told the Americans to go home once the new guy, Morsi, once he got it. Or I don't know who's in charge of Iraq right now. But anyway, not Morsi. Anyway, the guy in charge of Iraq right now. They're like, no, the U.S. bases have to pack up and go home. We're a sovereign nation. We don't want you here anymore. This is why Iraq is kind of like, 50-50, whether they'll appease the Americans, but they don't want them there, but they can't push them out because they don't have a military anymore, right? They've got some light forces here and there, but that's it. But there's rebel groups all over the place that are basically want, like I understand the bad blood between Iraq and Iran, but the bad blood between Iran and Iraq and the United States. I mean, we killed 1.5 million Iraqis down there, right? For what? For because they hate us because of our freedoms. You know what I mean? Like it's like no, we've murdered these people genocidally, and it's the entire West is guilty just to keep our elite staff, our elites basically making money with the banking system, the weapons industry, and all that, and keeping Israel happy, right? I'm glad there's a mask off now that people are starting to get it. Even the average normie is starting to understand Israel is the problem, right? And again, you're going to see all kinds of terror attacks and stuff like that. There's no stopping it now. Just don't, like in 2020, I told you, don't stand beside anybody famous. You know what I mean? Because of the assassinations that were taking place then. And I'm not calling for it. Remember what happened to Shinzo Abe, right? Well, that is the future of the world elites. Like people are just so fed up right now. You could see, like an armed guard just go take out his pistol and blow away whoever, right? Just I'll take one for the team. Bang, that way my wife and children will have a future, right? You're going to start to see that. These global pricks are just like the revolts are coming. The pitchfork revolutions are coming. Just wait till the next migrant crisis. The Germans and the French are probably not going to be very passive on this one, and the Italians are not going to be passive on this one. So like in Europe, like the right leaning stuff has all been like the AFD got subverted by a gay Jewish lady, like that type of stuff. And people are, the MAGA got taken out by a Zionist evangelical doomer, such as Trump. You know what I mean? Like all these things get subverted. Geet Wilders, and Tommy Roberts. Oh, it's just the Muslims are the problem. The Pakistani grooming gang. I'm not saying they're not problems, but it's like they'll never go after like the Jewish problem, right? Which is it's got us. It's the Jewish problem has now led to the collapse of the fucking global economy. Like fuel prices collapses. Like when Israel has an effect on fucking New Zealand and the Philippines, and it basically destroys their economies overnight. I think we need to have a conversation, But how dare you, anti-Semite? I was listening to this lady. Now, mind you, there's still like the World War II brainwashing and stuff like that. And look, I've read Mein Kampf. Okay, I'm not a pro-Hitler guy at all. No. Hitler was no better than Stalin. Stalin was worse than Hitler. So you know what I mean. But it's just. For some reason, I guess because Stalin was Jewish, he gets a pass, right? But because it's so tied to the Bolsheviks and all that stuff, right? And again, 80%, 90% of the Bolshevik leaders were all Jewish. There's you could tell when it's a normie that's sitting there freaking out, like watching like the cruelty of the IDF of what they do to. Like there was one video there I was watching on Red Ice last night. IDF stealing a bicycle from a little Palestinian girl. Look, I don't like the Palestinians. I don't want to live beside them, but I'm not for genociding them. You know what I mean? But like Israel, they set the what they call the settlers or whatever. the Israelis, basically the IDF, and not even the IDF. It's just like regular Israelis. They walk around with their M4s or whatever. They go to, they do all these horrible things to, other people. And there's nothing these people can do because it's like if they call the cops on them, well, like they're all IDF at the end of the day because every Israeli citizen pretty much serves in the military, right? And it's like if you harass, like if you do, they have the right to shoot people. Like it's fucking sick what they're doing, and we want to bring that over here. No, thank you. But the Western mindset is not set up like that for that kind of cruelty. We don't understand it. Like all these liberals that now hate Israel, right, because of the Palestine issue, they're just scratching the surface. Now, those people, I told you, the radical left, that, from all the Jewish curriculum of, critical theory, critical race theory, all that Frankfurt School of Thought stuff, again, all the multiculturalism stuff, all that stuff came in from Jewish minds. Even libertarianism was a Jewish mindset. Ayn Rand was a Jew, right? So, like hyper-individuality, communism, Marxism, global citizenry, all this stuff has had such negative effects. Not all negative effects, but I mean, there has been good things from globalism, if you take it with a balanced approach. Global trade is a good thing, okay? But not at the expense of everybody in your country. Not, like insourcing and outsourcing your manufacturing is a bad idea, right? Why? Because this is why we're in such dire straits here now. Now, mind you, we got a guy here now who everybody kind of hates, but, hate him for the right reasons. You know what I mean? So with Carney, he's kind of sitting where Stephen Harper was going, what happened to all our manufacturing? We're not, I remember Stephen Harper, the global ship thing, right? That, the warships we're getting now were basically signed under Harper. Okay, so that's a long time ago, guys. That's many, many moons ago. That's 12 years ago, 11, 12 years ago, right? And I remember Harper coming out on TV going, where's all our skilled labor? Like, we have like a massive shortage in like welders and engineers and all that. Like, what happened? NAFTA is what happened. Globalism is what happened. We went to a service sector economy. That's what happened. Germany's suffering that now. Hopefully this will be a wake-up call to Germany. Well, maybe on second thought, we'll put our climate change bullshit aside and we'll fire up those nuclear power plants again because we're running out of everything. There is some countries, though, like China, for example, because China has made such a push on the EV thing that the global fuel prices have made some of this this electric stuff a little bit more viable, right? And maybe that's what this is all for. So, okay, look, we can't fight over oil anymore. Let's just have electric vehicles everywhere. Okay, fine, whatever. And again, I'm not against the technology. What I'm against is like the forcing of stuff and the disruption for no reason. You know what I mean? Like, okay, you want wind and solar, that's fine, but be honest at how inefficient it is on large scale, right? You want battery technology, that's fine, but acknowledge that we have to find, if we're going to, pelt the market with everything battery operated, we have to come up with a way to recycle these batteries 100%, or at least 95%, because of, when you have a lithium ion battery, putting that back in the ground. Now, mind you, here in Canada, we are working on that recycling technology. The Japanese have been working on how to recycle these batteries so they don't end up in landfills, right? Then we got a sustainable thing. Mining cobalt, one thing Trudeau did was start mining cobalt here because the third world cobalt is, and again, Trudeau really didn't do anything good at all. He's been the worst guy ever. But he did it here because not for the right reasons, but maybe you could say, for the politically correct reasons, right? Because Trudeau is, the guy's a criminal, beyond the biggest next to his dad. That's the two most treasonous prime ministers we've ever had. And I know people out there, oh, Carney's treasonous. He's not. Carney's not treasonous at all. And again, I'm not defending the guy because I like the guy. I'm telling you, he's done nothing that's treasonous. He's done things that are upsetting, like the stupid gun buyback and hate speech laws and dumb shit like that. If you were to take that away, he's actually pretty good. You know, again, 1 year in, 12 new trade deals, currencies, bouncing around a bit, but more on the uptrend. Yeah, we created a lot of jobs. We lost a lot of jobs because of the fucking, but picture without what Carney's done, and we still had Trudeau again. We would not have created the 85,000 jobs that, even though we lost them. But most of those jobs that we lost were temporary foreign workers going back home. So that's good. That's good. I want to double confirm that, but that's good news. 2 quarters in a row, Canada's population has been shrinking. The last batch was a bunch of foreign students leaving. See it. Don't come back. You know what I mean? Not enough we haven't been shrinking by enough, but the fact that Canada's population for the first time since 1947 is shrinking, if we could see that every quarter, at least it's a step in the right direction because we're too overinflated, right? Like we got to get people. Now, Pierre Poilievre was suggesting the same thing, maybe just doing it a little bit more efficiently, In the States, well, Trump gave up on it. It's like, oh, well, the ICE thing is not popular, so I'm not going to do that. Fucking guy. Anyway. But yeah, no, I know I went off on a tangent here, but what I'm getting at is that like the economic problems it's a part of the World War III. It's tied in. It's a Siamese twin. So the Iranians are still making a little bit of money. There's no real ceasefire. Trump cannot find Trump is in a desperate situation because he knows he's losing the war. Again, every time guys. The Americans have at most 109 air tankers, minus, the 10 or 11 that have been shot down. They might have about 20,000 drones, but of the Predator drones, they might only have a few thousand, and they've already lost probably up to about 30 of them at $30 million a pop. And then the Global Hawks, they probably lost 4 or 5 of those, and those are like $100 million a piece. Like the Americans have already lost $1 billion in aircraft, on the books. So you can imagine the stuff they're not telling us about that's hit on the runways. You know what I mean? Like a Black Hawk helicopter sitting on and that Black Hawk looked a little bit weird. I think it was probably sitting there for parts. It's just because the tail was up in the air and it's a Black Hawk, right? It's Black Hawk's tail dragger. That's why I had a hard time figuring out what it was. I was like, oh, it's a Black Hawk. Okay. So yeah, there would be, stuff like that. So not a major victory for the Iraqis, but it's a parts aircraft that's now no longer available. You know what I mean? And that's just the first one. We don't know if they got the second one, right? Like we don't know how many drones they actually stormed the base with. And again, where's all the people on the base? We know they hit a small radar, so now that small radar won't be able to detect artillery coming in or mortars, which means the drones, if they can take out the radars, okay, on these bases, then your proxy groups can just fucking pelt everything with mortars and do that. Again, air bases are being hit pretty much on a nightly basis. There does seem to be more focus on Israel now, but you're about to see the steel and industrial sectors getting hit really hard in the Middle East. Now, you have to understand, we just made trade deals in the Middle East, too, with the Qatar, UAE, whatever, for like fishing and aluminum and steel, stuff like that. So Canada's aluminum steel sector is about to boom. Like, until, you have to understand, Canada is going to be under the same targeting threats from Iran because, like, Canada and the United States, yes, Americans and Canadians see each other as like different. But the rest of the Muslim world sees us all as the same. Like the West is the West, right? We're the great Satan to them. And, I don't blame them for having this worldview because we've done, like in the name of Israel, we've done the most evil things to them, right? I'm not one of the, I'm not one of those, what do you call it, like people, oh, I hate my own or whatever. No. What I'm saying is I'm a nationalist. Canada needs to not be involved with this, right? We're not directly involved, but we're the West, so we're going to get hit no matter what. like all these Gulf states, like they're going to have to tap out, especially if they start hitting the steel and stuff like that. Like many of these refineries that have been hit are going to be offline for 5 to 10 years. Like that's how bad the damage is. Now take out their steel, their aluminum. I think they already started hitting Iranian steel and aluminum production. You do that, they're going to do in kind. Like again, you're going to see global shortages in everything. It's unbelievable what's going on, and again, the harder part for people to believe, like the normie Normans, so to speak, is that this is being done on purpose. Like the global elites, despite what you think, they're all hedging their bets in time. Donald Trump signals to them on national TV, oh, we're going to be doing this. And then, all these guys, again, just look who's making the money, billions of dollars. They're just raping your retirement and everything like that. Yeah, so when the big airstrikes come in, so again, Donald Trump saying we're going to do a 10-day thing. Here's the ceasefire agreement, 15-point ceasefire. I didn't look at all the points, but it's just like completely lopsided, unreasonable. This is so that the MAGA people say, well, it's the Iranians that are unreasonable. We've offered them a peace deal. Because the Iranians know you can't trust the Americans at all. There's no way to trust them. The rest of the world, like outside the United States, it might be hard for them to hear, but nobody trusts you. It's like you make a deal with the Americans, they basically bomb you while you're in peace negotiations. Like not once, not twice, So a 10-day ceasefire so Israel can rearm itself? No, the Iranians are going to keep going. Now, if the Iranians are really smart, what they should do is say, okay, well, we'll allow you to have the 10-day ceasefire. Give them about 3 days of not doing anything. Get them all fucking getting everything ready, and when you see them all in one spot, then hit them. Now, again, take it with a grain of salt. Reports Merkava tanks. Okay, we know that Hezbollah destroyed about 13 of those in the past week or so, right? They're saying it might be as high as 100. That means in 13 weeks, you could see every Merkava tank completely destroyed. Israel, like the Merkava tank, is the lion of Israel. I've heard that quoted. It's basically their invincible Star of David. The Merkava tank is kind of the equivalent to the Israelis that the U.S. Duraplured is to the Americans. Okay, to see the Merkavas destroyed by these Cornet missiles, it's basically the 2006 Lebanon War 2.0, right? But this time, there's drones in there that Lebanese didn't have before that, right? And Hezbollah is basically pounding the shit out of the IDF. They're now starting to use drone attacks against small short-range radar. Like the Israelis are not going to be able to fight back for much longer, even with America. America can't save Israel at this point. I've said this before. There's going to come a day where you're not going to hear. There's going to be complete radio silence from Israel. No one's going to know what happened. Then you'll see it's just going to be smoldering ground. You're going to see the full carpet bombing of the entirety of Israel via rockets. These cluster rockets. These cluster rockets, they fire for effect, but each one of those little munitions, there's about 80 munitions, which are the equivalent of a 120 millimeter mortar, right? Sure, you're not going to destroy bunkers with it, but you're going to kill a lot of people, destroy a lot of infrastructure. Once they take out the water on the Israelis, and they're going to, you have to understand, in this next round, when Trump triggers it, again, Netanyahu doesn't care. He's probably not even in the country, right? They don't care if they kill their own because, they have this weird mindset that they'll sacrifice their own for the greater good, right? But yeah, this idea that only a handful of people have been killed there, no, there's probably thousands of people dead under rubble in Israel. A rocket comes in, it takes away half a fucking building, every time. These buildings are all porcelain, they're all porcelain and cement, right? They're not, they don't burn as easy, but they you hit a building, the fucking buildings just disintegrate. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like I feel bad for some of the Israelis. Like I'm sure there's a lot of them that want it, but most of the population was okay with what happened in Gaza. Again, you reap what you sow. So they're going to experience what they've done to other people, right? And the idea of everybody just flooding out of Israel to cross the desert, like you can't just run across the desert even in convoys. The water, like once the water goes down, they got maybe 2 days supply of fresh water. That's it. Most of the Gulf states like that. You're about to see like 500 million people die of thirst, literally dying of thirst. Yeah, and again, America has to fight in that. Like, how much water does a guy have to drink? Like what, 5 gallons of water a day? Like, it's a ridiculous amount of water these soldiers have. Again, with 80-pound pack on your back in like 50-degree heat, 45-degree heat. Holy fuck! Yeah, like I'd die. Like there's no way I could do that. And again, like just like never mind the fuel, the water. It's the water, and that's what Iran is prepared to do. Like they haven't done it because look, one thing Iran has done. And Professor Morandi again, I understand he's the he's the pro-Iranian guy. But one thing he's saying, and you can kind of track, maybe not everything he says every time, but it's not every time. But the United States hits stuff, they don't give anybody any warning, right? There's no warning. It's just they hit stuff. If there's people in there, fuck them, they're gonna die, right? If there's schoolgirls, fuck them, right? We'll hit them not once, but we'll hit them 3 times, and they did that. The Iranians are like, we're going to hit this, the banking sector. Stay 1.5 miles away from the banking sector because we're going to hit it. So they hit like Citigroup. They've hit Amazon. They do like the IRA tactics where we're going to give you a warning to empty your buildings because like our goal is to destroy your manufacturing stuff like that, not the people. Meanwhile, it doesn't really matter because if you destroy enough infrastructure, the people are going to die anyway, right? Like the food must be running low in the Middle East by now. Like what? Even the average person, if they could buy 2 weeks worth of groceries, even if they max out their credit cards, right? I don't think everybody can use credit cards right now over there. I think there's a lot of financial problems going on just because of the disruptions. The banks getting hit. I don't know how many banks they hit, but they hit a few, right? So the financial sector is getting hit. Their industrial sector is getting hit. Their tourism sector is getting hit. Their airliners have been, wow. Like the cost of military stuff destroyed is one thing, but you add up everything else, man. It's got to be about $500 billion worth of stuff blown up. Now, don't get me wrong, Iran is getting its ass kicked too. The only difference is the stuff they're losing is not necessarily superficial, but it's not halting the war. Like you keep hearing all these pro-Israel people and MAGA people like, oh, well, like they can't fight for much longer. Look, the rocket attacks are low now, so therefore they're running out. No, that's a worse thing. It's worse. It means they've ran out of targets. It means the war, if they have to fire 200 rockets a night to overwhelm Iron Dome and all that, whatever's left of the Iron Dome, which I think they still have quite a bit. They've been preparing since the last attack. Look, this is true promise. Yeah, sorry. May I correct? It is true absolute promise for, right? So what true promise for in the retaliation. So this is the 4th time the Iranians have been attacked by America and Israel, right? In this conflict. 4 times. And they basically, the stuff that's going to hurt them, yes, it's going to hurt Iran for a long time. What it's not doing is slowing down any of the underground tunnels. Sure, they get a couple of strikes on the tunnel entrances. Some of those entrances are just decoys. But even if they do, look, bulldozers are a thing. You know what I mean? Okay, yeah, you hit the rubble. It's like runways. You blow up a runway, 4 hours later, it's patched. You know what I mean? You can drop a fucking nuke on a runway. If you can stand the radiation, you can patch it, and it's just a hole in the ground. You just fill it in with a bulldozer. Fill it in with sand. They got lots of it there. Fill it in with sand, right? Clear the rubble, start over again. So it's this idea that Iran is like, oh my God, they're They're scared. They're about to. No, they know that if they surrender or give up, why would they? There's no benefit for them to stop because if they just keep racking up damage, look, you have this is okay. Vietnam was a very unpopular war. Okay, Desert Storm was unpopular, but it had some rally around the flags. And then 9/11 came along, and then you had Operation Iraqi Liberation, Iraqi freedom, oil, underground oil, yeah. And again, these are oil wars, right? And again, it's not just for the Americans to steal the oil; it's for Saudi Arabia to keep hegemony too, right? Like it's all about the petrodollar, global. Like people don't want that anymore. Even the soldiers don't want that, right? Like when you have people in the U.S. military that are probably sympathetic to the Iranians fighting back, you know what I mean? Sure, you got those guys that, like I was listening to one guy. This guy, he seems like a nice guy, but he's one of those guys that he's just like, we're the good guys. I know we're the good guys. I hope and we believe Israel's our ally. You know the type, right? They're not bad people. They just, they kind of have the blinders on. When, like, you should understand, Israel can't wait to get Americans killed for them. You know what I mean? They hate you. They hate everybody. They hate themselves. Fuck. You know what I mean? Like, these people are really weird. The more you look into them, and I know it's not all of them, but they're, if you, again, I hate to be ranting on the Jews all the time, but they are strange people. There's no doubt about that. And it just turns out half of them are fucking evil or more. You know what I mean? Why? We could go on forever and a day on that. And their upbringing, this idea of telling them they're chosen people, that everybody's out to get them all the time, and that they need to enslave the goy. It's just all these crazy things. Everybody's an anti-Semite. It's never our fault. Even when we're, persecuting people, it's always, we're always the victim. Like this, it is what it is, right? It is what it is. And it's just, it is what it is. One good thing about this, though, is all the chaos that's going to come out of it is going to wake up the progressives. Again, all these progressives, and I told you this years before, again, we've been in the 10th Crusade since 2010. And it really takes off in 2015 with the migrant crisis, right? That's the beginning, but people still believe in rule of law. They still believe in the hope and dream and John Lennon's Imagine, and we all bleed red. Martin Luther King stuff, whatever. They believe all that, right? They believe because they're like the West is in like la land when it comes to that stuff. No, everybody, if you just bring all these refugees here, they'll be just like us. There's no difference, and then you find out they're so culturally different that they can't integrate, right? And the thing is that, like, the illusion of it is going to break. And the problem is that the illusions that'll break on the normies will just make people sensible, right? Centristly more sensible. And the people on the neocon right, well, they either come out of the ether or they're going to be hated forever and exiled. And, we see the tar and feathering of, like, the MAGA people now, right? That are still going along with I support our troops. Why? You know what I mean? Well, I have to. Yeah, but they're doing evil. You know what I mean? You have to be consistent. When you're not fighting for freedom and liberty and democracy, you got to call it out. And that's why I think that Gerald Ford, I think it did get hit by something myself, and they're just covering for it. But it's totally believable that sailors that have been on too long of a deployment, it's not that they're on too long of a deployment, because the last time you saw an aircraft carrier out that long was in Vietnam, and those guys didn't sabotage their ship. They stayed in the fight. They just endured it, right? They didn't like it. They wanted to go home, but they stayed in it because they, even if they didn't know what the cause actually, why they were at war with the Viet Cong, they at least they still had that kind of trust of government, right? Where now it's like, we know this is for Israel, we know it's bullshit, and the fact that again, well played on the Trump administration saying, okay, we'll give them this bullshit that no new wars and all that stuff, right? And Trump, I ended 7, 8 wars. He didn't end any wars. There's not a single war he ended. Oh, Afghanistan. No, that was Joe Biden. Why? Because the result would have been the same for Trump, right away. Like getting out of Afghanistan. Yeah, it would have been the same scene. It just would have been Trump. And Trump knew this. Like, there was no peaceful way to leave the Middle East. The second you do, look, the Taliban is fully back in power again, and they're now at war with the fucking Pakistanis. You give them an inch, holy shit, these guys, they respond fast. You know what I mean? All they know is war. It's the Middle East mindset. There's gunpowder in their veins. I remember the Lebanese guy telling me, "Yeah, we got gunpowder in our veins." Yeah, I believe him. He wasn't wrong. But what I'm telling you is that, yeah, they duped the American people that you got a peace president. So everybody started signing up for the military because, I'll just get a college degree, I'll get this. And then it's like, what, Trump's going to send me to war on behalf of Israel? All the conspiracy theorists are right. Like, I was listening to this normie girl, and she's crying about all the evil stuff that the IDF is doing to, people over there and whatever, right? And I get it, the Palestinians do horrible things too. Again, these people hate each other, right? But you understand why the Palestinians do it, because they've been, basically fucking, the Israelis are very lopsided in the bad here. You know what I mean? Yeah, sure, it's bad blood for 4,000 years, whatever. But on the other hand, you understand too that, yes, the Israelis are the ones doing most of the violence. And, that's why you have Hamas and Hezbollah. And if anything, Hamas and Hezbollah was created by the IDF as a basically controlled opposition. It just got out of control on them. It's like basically Al Qaeda again. Look, this goes back to the fall of the Ottoman Empire with the neocon, the birth of the neocon, right? I saw a documentary about Henry Kissinger and neoconism and where it all starts, and you go back to William Herschel and all that stuff, not William Herschel. What was the guy? Anyway, the Jews overthrew the Ottoman Empire to bring in Zionism in neocons, right? And it starts there, and then in the '60s they subverted. They were able to subvert the U.S. government to the point where, but it's been going on for a long time. And you've got all these normies that are seeing this, and they're like, oh my God, the Israelis are worse than Hitler. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, that's part one. Okay, so they're still on these people are Nazis, blah, 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 whatever. Okay, and these white supremacist Israelis, I laugh when I hear that. It's like, the average Israeli is not white. Some of them are, sure, whatever, but, they're, anyway. White supremacy. The Israelis are not white supremacists. they're Jewish supremacists. They're not white supremacists. And anyway, you get people like that. Some of them are going to say, well, if these guys are so bad, and the number one thing that Jews fear is Hitler, so to speak, what was Hitler talking about? Then, okay, they start reading Mein Kampf. And again, if you read Mein Kampf, you're gonna hear a lot of recurring themes. You know what I mean? And it's not that I'm supporting what Hitler said. What I'm saying is that you're going to understand what he was dealing with, right? And every single time, right? So you might not support Hitler, but you'll understand what his take was. You know what I mean? And a lot of people, especially on the radical left, all these radical Bolshevik communist types, right, are going to turn into neo-Nazis. Yes. Why? Because they're radical. Why? Because they're like, okay, well, I can't be a communist anymore because it's too Jewish. I'm going to have to become a neo-Nazi. So all these radical college students that were, radicalized by, basically the Frankfurt School of Thought and critical theories and all that, once they find out that it comes from, basically the Israeli mindset, the Jewish mindset, oh my God, that's white supremacy, and they're going to, ditch that for something else. But then some of them are going to be just like, well, the Israelis are so evil to the Palestinians, I understand Hitler now. So again, there's no way out of it for the Jews. Again, no matter where they go in the world, look at all the things going on in the UK. Oy vey, you blew up our ambulances, and people are saying, how come they get their own ambulances? Oh no, we're just helping, and it's paid for and replaced right away, that fast. Okay. Oh, we don't have enough for senior care. We don't have enough for healthcare. You blew up Jewish ambulances? Well, day later, fully funded. You know what I mean? People, the noticing. It's the noticing. You know what I mean? So I hate to be bitching on them all the time. Whatever. But it is a big key of the problem, and there's nothing to do about it now, but just sit back and just witness it all. The Jews have pretty much killed themselves. They don't even they're too dumb to realize that they can't self-reflect as a group, right? Everybody hates Israel around the world right now. The only other country that's hated as much as Israel right now is probably the United States. Look, the Iranians have the moral high ground, whether you like that or not. It's not me showing support for Iran. What I'm saying is you attacked them. You know what I mean? Like, you can't say Iranian aggression when they're in a response, you know what I mean, to your aggression. It's just, you might not like it's a heavy-handed response. Yeah, it is. But anybody logical, I was an alien and I came down to this planet, I said, what's this conflict over? And you explained it to me honestly. I'd say, well, these guys, I can understand why they're shooting back. I can understand why they're hitting the Gulf states that are supporting. Again, look, the United States goes into Iraq, okay? The first things they take out is water treatment plants, hospitals, food storage, etc. That, and then, all that stuff. And the electricity. The bombing of downtown Baghdad. The video footage is in, high definition color still, even though it's 1991. Yeah. You see the highway of death. 10,000 people slaughtered on the highway by a bunch of A-10s, right? Trying to escape to Kuwait. And, those were all terrorists, but yet, here's all these bodies of like little kids and stuff, ripped apart by depleted uranium, arms, legs, faces blown off, charred, burnt, baby clothes all over the, yeah. That's what they do, right? And then to sell it to you, well, we're doing this for freedom and liberty and democracy, and we got to support our troops. Well, the thing is, in 91, you didn't see that in real time. You didn't see the bad stuff. You saw the bombing of downtown Baghdad. You saw the A-10s coming in. You saw the Apache gunship helicopters massacring people, right? Like the live leak stuff, right? You got to see that stuff later on. Sure, but the thing is you didn't see the gore of it on national TV. You just saw the PR of it. Okay, here's an Iraqi tank getting hit. Okay, fine. But you don't see the guy burning to death inside the tank. Now you do because of drones. The Ukraine war is televised, like horrific murder. Here's a Russian guy getting a fucking drone in the face. Here's a Ukrainian guy getting a drone in the face. There was this footage, I don't know if they killed her or not. It was a Russian paramedic. She was on the battlefield. She was pointing at her cross, going like this in front of the drone, right? And you can see the drone was, moving in close or whatever. She's just like, I'm not armed. I'm like, she has no, I like pointing at a medical cross. Sure, she's wearing the Russian uniform. They probably killed her. I don't know. Again, if you're an Ukrainian, it's like, well, that's a Russian. You know what I mean? Like she's going to be helping soldiers that are going to kill my people. And just the drone footage is god awful. There was one guy lying on the ground like this, just looking at the drone, like he knows he's dead. He's wounded. He's just lying there. It's like, oh, ended. Kind of thing. You see guys that on their knees fucking begging for mercy while the drone's taking care of them, and you just see the drone going. Like they're just sitting there crying, tears fucking, don't kill me, don't kill me. Yeah. That's what our world elites make money off of. Yeah. So I support the troops. You know what I mean? Like, again, And I remember an Iraqi veteran saying this, don't support the troops. He goes, yeah, it's politically incorrect to say that. But this is what you're supporting, us murdering people, us doing all these horrible things. I talked about Gulf War syndrome with, the depleted uranium and all that stuff, the Halliburton stuff, right? Again, these veterans come back, and Justin Trudeau said the quiet part out loud. Oh, the veterans are just asking for too much. we need that money for refugees. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like the whole system is so corrupt. Like the whole, futures contracts, usury, stock market shit. And even at that, the stock market that goes up, good news it goes up, bad news it goes up. They're even having a hard time keeping that fucking thing inflated, right? Unbelievably evil. Unbelievably evil. But yeah, no, getting back, one last thing I want to say about the CRAMs. Okay. The CRAMs couldn't stop more than three drones coming in to the U.S. Embassy, right? Now, I get it. An embassy is not a electronic warfare ship, whatever. But you have 81 Oligarchs, I don't know how many Tongaroga class, 1 or 3 Independence class destroyers, 11 aircraft carriers. It sounds like a lot, maybe about 100 or so corvettes and frigates. Not that many support ships. Boxer and Wasp class mini aircraft carriers, 6 or 10 of them, maybe, whatever there is. 109 air-to-air refuelers. The U.S. Navy has just been shown to be pretty much obsolete in the sense of when you step up the level, okay, the Iranians, sure, they're not just firing their missiles out there willy-nilly, but the aircraft carriers have to stay so far back that you have to completely rely on air-to-air refueling to come in. Now, once they take out all those air tankers and AWACS, you're down to drones and satellites. Now, the drones are going to take a long time because, again, it could be 20,000. The Reaper drones don't have the range of the Predator drones. And without air-to-air refueling, the Predator drones, yes, they have the range for a long time, but you eventually have to bring them back to refuel them, right? So, sure, those things can fly for like 30 hours, but you know what I mean? They're not very fast, and they're easy to get shot down. And, again, the stealth drones, those Q-180, 150s and 180s, the Iranians have already shown that when you get in too close with those things, they have commandeered with electronic warfare and stole them out of the sky and basically captured them. They've done this on a Q-180, the most advanced stealth drone out there, Navy drone that they have. So these drones are going to be limited, to the air defense systems. So at some point, they're going to have to bring in something that has the range. And that's basically going to be the A6 Prowler, or maybe bring in some old intruders upgraded, I don't know, or the F-111s. Again, these are going to be older aircraft. Maybe they have to bring out the fucking F-4 Phantoms again. I don't know. I don't know how many F-4 Phantoms out of the 5,000 are still in existence around the world. I know the Brits had about 400. The Spain had about 100 or 200. Germany had about 400. Americans, out of the 5,000. Turkey and Egypt, I still think have some. The Iranians have about 30. So I don't know how many of those are left, but they might have to bring those out just because of the long range. F-14s are gone, so can't bring out the F-14s anymore because out of the 130, I think they scrapped them all. I think the last 12 F-14s were destroyed in Iran last week or whatever. That was the remainder of them. But those, the F-14 had a longer range, but again, completely outdated aircraft. And if you have to rely on A-10s, A-6 Prowlers, and F-111s, because those are the only things that will have long enough range once the air tankers are taken out. You either have to bring the aircrafts carriers into like 100 miles off the coast kind of thing, where they would get sunk right away. And then you take out the aircraft carriers, suddenly all F-18s, F-16s, maybe even possibly the F-15s wouldn't have enough range to be able to get there, especially if every air base in the Middle East is destroyed. You'd have to fly them from Europe. Now, you could fly probably with 2 drop tanks on an A6 Prowler in, again, an airplane that's been out of service. There might be 600 of those. So let's say they can bring those in, okay, no problem. They could use those to do air-to-air refueling with the F-35s or whatever, smaller refueling. They might be able to do that, but even the F-35 with drop tanks is not going to have the range to get to Iran from Europe and back, right? Or even the far side of the Middle East, right? They'll be destroyed on the ground. That's what the Iranians are doing now. Take out the radars. Now we can take out all these support aircraft on the ground, including I think a C-130 or another C-17 Globemaster may have been destroyed as well. So again, heavy lift. Now you can't get troops around. You can't get resupply around, right? And if they fly just like fighter bombers, medium bombers over Iran, then you got to contend with F-4 Phantoms, MiG-29s, and if there's any F-14s left, and possibly, I don't know, I know the Iranians were building them. I don't know how many they got built, but maybe some Su-30s. If there's Su-30s in the air, yeah, good luck with that. You know what I mean? So again, by the end of next week, right, we'll be in week 5. Week 5 and week 6, I think, are going to be the turning points of this war. Because unlike Desert Storm, where you had all these bases that you could fly a C-5 Galaxy from the United States, drop off all the weaponry and, supplies that you needed for the week, whatever, for all the soldiers there, plus all the mail from back home. Yeah, you can't even get the delivery mail from back home now. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, all that's getting taken out. So, yeah, the Iranians are winning. And if they're winning in that sense that they're going to just stop the ability to fight. And once they get to a certain threshold where there's 0 radars, short range, long range, medium range, whatever, and no air defense systems other than fighter aircraft. And if the fighter aircraft are having to be stationed off way at the backside of Saudi Arabia or, basically Cyprus or wherever, or back to Crete, I mean, if they got to stage the war from there, I mean, you're talking 1,000 miles, almost 1,000 miles just to get to Iran. And if you do that, okay, that means you're going to start to see, once you start to see the Su-24s, look, the Iranians tried it in the second week, and I think they were just early. And the F-15s got them, right? An F-15 got to them. But you're probably going to start to see Iranians starting to do airstrikes. Yes, airstrikes on U.S. bases. Once they know that the air defense systems are down enough, like you have to understand when you see these drones flying around, like these Iraqi drones and stuff like that, they're surveilling to say, okay, look, guys, there's no more air defense there. Okay, never mind the rockets. Send in an Su-24 with 24 500-pound bombs on it or something like that. Maybe they carry 8 or whatever they carry, like that. Those things can carry a lot, right? They're a bomb truck. Yeah, they might not be that technologically advanced. It's 1960s technology. But to picture 12 500-pound bombs, cluster bombs going over one U.S. base, like Al-Adid Air Base or something like that. All that munitions, all that shit on that base getting destroyed. Just because they'll have the bombing run done. Like here they are coming in completely undetected now. 50 feet, 80 feet off the ground at 700 miles an hour. Look, if it wasn't for that F-15 had 2 minutes to intercept those things before those things were going to go over the base. They got that close. Like even U.S. pilots, critiquing it, like that's pretty impressive. Yes, they got shot down and they didn't make it, but they got within 2 minutes, within 2 minutes of the base. 2 minutes of the base. Yeah. Now with the radars down, especially the smaller radars on some of the biggest bases, like those radars can't get resupplied easily. You know what I mean? Like you got to drop everything off and get the heavy lift aircraft off the ground, and before the next drone attack or whatever. You know what I mean? For resupply. So, and again, and how many troops are actually staying on the bases? You know, these bases aren't adequately defended right now. So once you take out the radars, the short, like little anti-artillery radars, you know, that track mortars and stuff like that, they probably have a lot of that, but you know, then it allows the rebel groups to like take out other critical things with the mortars from like 5 miles away. And then once the air defense is down, sure, there's mad pads and stuff like that. But look, you go by even at 400 miles an hour over any air base in the world, you're over it in seconds, right? You have just enough time to let go of the bomb release. By the time you pull out your mad pad launcher, these guys are like 15 miles away. You know what I mean? So watch for that. I think that's coming next, but it will be after, you know, the counter strikes of, again, taking out more air defense system and early warning radar. That is the radar analysis of, you know, like you can't replenish these radars, you know, and yeah. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. So there we go. Have yourselves a great day. Eh? Be true to yourself, be true to others. Always do the right thing. And always do the right thing. Yeah. So there we go.